First, I wanted to show you the reference pictures I'm using to finish this spread, and this is a really nice example of how I use several reference pictures. As you can see, this is one picture, another picture, and then for the landscape, I'm actually using a few pictures as well. So I'm combining this image with this image and creating kind of a hybrid. So it's mainly this one, but I'm actually using some of these background elements from this picture as well, and the cacti as well. So you see, you don't have to replicate the reality the exact same way it is. Sometimes if you feel like you want to put 2 trees instead of 1, this is, totally fine. So I decided to create this kind of composition here. I first started to paint the penguins, then the iguana, need to finish it by the way. And the central part remained untouched for a long time. So today it's time to finish it. I'm going to use my Craftamo brushes. These are brushes from my custom brush set created in collaboration with Craftamo. This is how it looks like. And it comes with this beautiful box, and there are 8 brushes here. 2 of these brushes are travel brushes. So travel brushes means, let me show you. It means this is how they look like when they're closed, and then when you open, the handle, the lid becomes the handle, and you have a full-sized brush. So these are cool for traveling. This is what I was traveling with during the 3.5 months. I was actually traveling with I was traveling with all of the brushes, but I was mainly using these 2 brushes. So number 10, and then there's one more in this set, which is number 6. That I don't have nearby, but it's smaller than this one. But for studio work, there are 6 other brushes, including some of the very universal ones like number 8. This is what I'm going to use today. Number 2 for the tiniest details, and so on. There's a mop brush. This is number 14. This is something what I might use today. Of course, I will need my watercolors. I'm just going to grab my travel sketching palette and grab some colors from here. I might want to use the full-size palette for, because I'm in my studio now, I can have the luxury of mixing my colors on a full-sized palette. It's always nice. And that's probably it. Water, some paper towels or napkins. This is what I always have nearby. I think I'm going to start with a big brush. So I want to give this lake, actually it's not a lake, it's a lagoon, so it's salty water here. I want to give it a certain color. So the color of this water is quite interesting because there are lots of reflections, and I want to start with the water here. So I'm going to mix my colors for the water. I am going to mix some of this light blue. My main watercolor set is from White Nights. I recently bought a new set from Sennelier. Sennelier is an amazing brand that I love, and I decided to invest in a set from them. But I still have some colors from White Nights, so this is what I'm currently using. This one is cerulean blue, I guess that's how you call it. This is emerald green, and these are the colors I'm going to use for the water, for the lightest shades of the water. As for the darkest shades, I'm going to use some ultramarine or ultramarine or cobalt, doesn't really matter. I'm going to mix it with emerald green. This is what I'm going to use for the darker shades. And then if I want to create an even darker version of this color, I can add some indigo to this mix. So this is what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the cerulean blue and I'm going to cover everything with this color. So I'm working with the big brush because I want this area to remain wet for quite a long time, because I'm going to use the wet in wet technique. That's why when I apply the color with the big brush, you see I can instantly cover big areas of paper, first of all. And then secondly, if I see that some areas are drying, I can just go and really quick apply more color there to those areas I'm interested in. And it's just easier to do it with a big brush instead of needing to use smaller brushes. And interesting fact, actually useful fact about watercolor, watercolor dries quicker or faster depending on the temperature in your room. For example, here it's summer right now. I'm currently in the south of Italy. And it's summer here, so the weather is really hot and my room is quite hot, even though I'm painting with the air conditioning on, but it's still quite hot, so my watercolor dries really quickly. So I need to adjust the speed of my painting and also the amount of water I use so that it does not dry instantly. So I use more water than usual, and I try to paint a little bit quicker than usual so that I can still use the techniques I want to use. So I'm speaking about the wet in wet technique now. So while I was talking, I just mixed a new color. I mixed some lemon yellow or cadmium lemon with emerald green. And I'm going to use this color to create these reflections. And while I was talking, by the way, some of the color, some of the this area got almost completely dry, which is actually not bad because I'm going to pass now to sketch the reflections on that area. And this is a really nice stage for sketching the reflections because you see my paper is almost dry but not entirely, so it's kind of allowing me to create these fuzzy edges without the color blooming too much. So I actually love this stage for painting water, and here you can see what kind of effect it creates. So I've painted this area here so we can see some reflections, and I'm going to continue working on these reflections on this left side. So you see I am gently avoiding these plants, so the cacti, and instead you see I'm painting around them and creating this kind of a reflection effect. There you go. There is this big shadow here. I can totally see it. So I'm going to paint it now. And this is a sketch, so I don't have to be photorealistic. I'm not trying to replicate the exact same thing I am seeing on my reference. So my goal is to make things look believable. So I want this landscape to be recognizable. I want it to be, recognizable, but I don't have the goal of making it like photorealistic or extremely detailed, because this is not, I would say, the most important thing here. So I still want these three sketches to kind of live together, and they're equally important. That's why I don't want one of them to be extremely detailed and others seem unfinished. I am continuing to create these water reflections. So I see these cacti trees create these interesting reflections. So I'm going to do them now. And I think I will need to darken some of the shadows here. But for now, I'm working on kind of connecting this right sketch with this central sketch. So nothing fancy, but just kind of making them look like they belong together. So I think this little corner here looks better. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush now. I'm going to use number 8. All I was using now was the brush number 14, so it's a mop brush. It's a brush that holds water really, really well. And I actually love this brush for sketching. It's a really useful brush. But now I think it's time to start adding smaller details, and I'm going to switch to this. I'm switching to this 8 number. So I'm going to mix my color again. I need a refill of indigo. I'm going to show you, by the way, how I do my refill of my colors. So this is indigo, almost finished. I'm using it a lot, you can totally see it. This one is from Winsor & Newton, but it's quite a bit of classical color, so you can use any brand. And I'm just squeezing some, and you see that this is all I need to do. Then if I want to travel with this set, depending also on how liquid the colors are in tubes, this one is getting dry, so this color is not going anywhere, even though even if I close the palette now and I go with it, it's not going to spill or go anywhere. But sometimes the colors are quite liquid, and if you fill your pans, you need to wait a day or two for them to kind of get a little bit more solid before you travel with them. So this is just an advice on how you can use and how you refill your palettes. So once I have some indigo on my palette, I can mix my color. I'm using emerald green, indigo, and maybe a touch of sepia as well. So I want to have this kind of a dark color. And this is what I'm going to use for these darker elements. So there's this kind of arch that I want to paint, and I'm going to use this darker color for outlining the darkest elements of the arch, and also the shadow in this area. So I'm going to use, you see these big strokes closer to the subject and smaller strokes when I'm getting more further away from it. This is usually how I do reflections. I'm also adding, you see, a few darker strokes of reflections here, and I see there's like this other arch there. So I'm going to paint it real quick like this, and then I'm going to continue working on it. So basically what I did, I painted the shadow area of these arches. And then I'm going to paint this white area just a bit later. For now, I think I'm quite satisfied with the water. Just maybe I'm going to add a few more darker reflections here. And I think this looks good. And then a few more cacti reflections. Here you see I used very thin strokes to make them. And then to paint the cacti itself, I'm just going to use the same color and kind of eyeball it. So you see I'm not trying to make it perfect at all, and even the color that you use does not really matter. I could mix a new color for it, but since I have some of this kind of dark blue, I think I could use it as well. See, the most important thing is not doing any straight lines. So I'm kind of touching, you see I'm touching my surface and creating these cacti that are kind of far away from us. So they're not very defined, a little bit fuzzy, and these kind of irregular strokes I think convey this feeling, this idea quite good. See, I'm adding a few more, some in some areas, because I see there are a lot of them on my reference. I drew a few of them with my pencil, but you see sometimes if I want to add more, I do it just directly with my brush without the need of making a pencil sketch, because these are simple elements. And I think now the sketch looks a little bit more interesting. And at this point, I can mix a color for the rocks, for these rocks that the iguana is standing on and that are here. So I'm going to use some ochre, yellow ochre, and maybe this cerulean blue. Let me see what that gives me. Maybe just ochre. And I'm going to apply it to some of these areas here. So I'm actually going to cover this leg of the iguana as well, because this is quite of a light color anyways. So if I want to darken some of the details here, I can always do it later. And I want to create this darker shadow near the iguana. So this is usually a moment you see when I'm finishing a sketch. This is when I'm tying the sketches all together. And sometimes I can switch from one area to another. For example, you see I started to paint the rock, but then I immediately see that I want to cover this little... I want to create a shadow here, casted by the iguana, so I just go and do it immediately. Something like this. So I'm just going to paint around this iguana. To give a sort of a background for it, but also to create the illusion it's kind of standing on this rock or something. And finally, I'm using the same color to outline this rock even better, this kind of a platform this iguana is standing on. So you see I'm using these a little bit irregular lines, and I'm working with the tip of my brush now to create this rock texture. And I'm also going to outline these fingers that I'm going to paint later, but for now I think this is good. Maybe add some shadow to some portions of this rock, something like this. I think I'm pretty happy with this now. Let's add more shadow here. So I see this is the area that is supposed to be quite dark. At least this is what I see on my reference. So I'm going there and covering it, and I'm just going to take a little bit of this color and add it to the reflections as well. So you see I'm doing it in some areas also behind this front cacti, because I want to make that area behind it darker so that the cacti itself stands out. So this method is called negative painting, when you, instead of painting the subject to make it stand out, you paint around the subject. So this is what I did here. You see I painted behind the cacti, and the cacti itself became more visible. And then I'm using this same dark blue color to just kind of outline some features of the cacti even better. And maybe some on this other one. So just because they're on the foreground. So the very important thing is the elements that are on the foreground should be more visible. So sometimes you can make them darker, you can add more contrast to them, so that it's clear to the viewer that these are in front. So something like this I think looks quite good. And as a final step, so I think maybe I'm also going to add just a little bit of details to these, to the iguana. Just took some burnt sienna and added these colors, a little bit of this color to some areas of the leg. And then I'm going to take a really small brush, so this is number 2, and I'm grabbing some of this color I already had on my palette. So this is sepia plus indigo plus maybe something else, but usually what I do, I just grab something from my palette, something that seems right to me, and not necessarily mix an entirely new color. So first, it's quicker, and when you sketch you want to be quick, and secondly, it allows me to kind of maintain a cohesive color palette across all of the sketches on this page. So by using the same colors, I'm maintaining the harmony on the whole spread. And you see, by using my small brush, I'm just adding some lines using this color on the iguana, and It's going to make it look more finished and more detailed, because the head now is quite detailed, but the rest of the body is not. So by creating these short lines and details, I am making it look more finished. And then I don't have the reference picture of the iguana open now. I'm kind of inventing it a little bit, but I think it's fine since I use this a little bit of expressive style for the iguana. So I don't want it to be photorealistic. I kind of want it to be a little bit expressive. So now I'm just sketching as I remember it, probably. And then maybe later, if I want, I can go grab the reference picture and finish the details more accurately. This is kind of a more advanced technique, I would say. If you are a beginner and you don't feel confident doing this, this is totally fine, because again, this is quite an advanced trick, but I think it's good to know. There you go. So I've quickly finished this leg of the iguana. I can also add more shadow here, because again, the iguana is on the foreground, so I'm interested to make it look nice and detailed. So I'm adding some of this dark color here as well. All right, so I think this is good. Maybe a few touches here. So I'm just adding a little bit more texture to this rock. Again, I don't use any reference. I'm just doing what feels right to me. So adding these kind of lines for texture. And at this point, I am ready to finish this rock. So I'm going to add just a little bit more contrast to it, using the same exact color I was just using for these details on the iguana. And I'm using it to underline some of these darkest elements on these rocks. So you see that I'm making them look more realistic. And finally, I'm going to use the tip of my brush to outline some of the details on this ground. And basically, I think we're kind of finishing this sketch. I want to add just a few more details here. Again, I'm grabbing some colors I already have on my palette, and I'm going to use them, and some tiny lines, little strokes again, to kind of imitate the rocky surface. So these things are on the background, so that's why I don't want them to be too detailed, I don't want to spend too much time on these. So you see I've added a few strokes, and I think I'm actually quite happy with the way things are. And instead, you see I'm focusing on giving the final details to some of these reflections, especially these on the foreground. But not too much. Again, I don't want this to be the most important thing on the sketch. And I think actually I'm quite happy with the landscape. I think I'm going to stop here. And instead, what I want to do, I want to add some final touches to these cacti. So again, because they're on the foreground, I just want to add a little outline to them, maybe a little texture on the trunks, using maybe short lines. This is how I usually do it on my sketches, and use some outline on some areas. Again, you see I'm not outlining everything, but just some elements to get kind of a more defined appearance. There you go. And the trick here is not overworking. So again, I want to maintain a sketchy look. That's why I think I'm going to stop real quick. I think something like this looks nice. I am going to work on just blending this area here a little bit more so that the transition looks natural. Maybe something like this. I like to use kind of expressive brush strokes in my work. So I did something similar here and created sort of a connection between these two sketches, but this is the way I do it. What I think is cool about travel sketching and sketching in general is that you can come up with your own creative ideas. There you go. I could potentially add more details here to these rocks, but I think if I start to dive into these, the video will be way too long. So I'm going to just eyeball some of these rocks here. Again, I'm not using any references. I'm just doing what feels right to me. And maybe this is the way I will leave the sketch, I think. I'm just going to outline some of these front rocks. This is the idea here, so I'm just outlining these rocks that the penguins are standing on. Just a few more strokes here on the reflections, and that's it. I have one more finished spread. I really hope you enjoyed the little sketchbook tour. I hope you enjoyed watching how I usually finish my spreads and how I integrate different subjects in one spread. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up.